Now you might be wondering why does this thing have its own section? Well, you see, those are the fancy buffet. Pretty damn overwhelming, but they are usually worth the price of admission if you know how to tackle them. So that's what we're doing. Let's check out the workshop, shall we? Ah yes, the workshop. And only the workshop, sadly. There are other websites where you can get mods like the game maps, but for this video, I'll just be sticking to the workshop. This lovely labyrinth can be accessed by clicking the workshop button found between the guide tab and the support tab, or by scrolling down and clicking the workshop from there. So yeah, just click the one on top. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to hell. It is here where you'll find almost everything that you want, if you know how to navigate this realm full of grids and drop-down menus. As you can see, there is a search bar over there, but I suggest clicking one of the categories down there first, as it gives you the options to refine your search, unless if you're into searching for something recent, like from a week ago. You can also search for some collections, but I suggest only going for those if you have a theme in mind. Once you have your category selected, you can now search and sort beyond the past week with this tab over here. Or if you just click most subscribe and start downloading. Oh hey Shrek. Anywho, once you have something that captures your eye, click it, read the description, check what other mods it needs, and look at the comments just to see what everyone thinks about the mod before you subscribe. Doing so will automatically download, install, and activate the mod in your game the moment you open it. So if you're subscribed to multiple Lewis mods, you might want to uncheck the ones that you're not using by using the in-game menu, as they will conflict with each other. This is not always the case, as some maps with multiple parts will conflict with each other without doing any harm. Also, as a side note, if you enjoy or dislike any content that you find on the workshop, please rate it accordingly when you have the time, as it keeps the workshop alive and well oiled for future onlookers when they want to find the perfect mod. Let's start with the survivor category, where you can change how your character looks from something that's lore friendly, like giving them a different outfit or hairstyle, to anime waifu, other video game, Marvel, a freaking sausage, Velociraptors, Praise the Sun, Fortnite, Pokemans, Horse, SpongeBob, DMCA takedowns, Japanese coach, more cartoons, Call of Duty, and JoJo. Now remember that as the host, the hitbox of the survivors changes depending on what model is the host using. So if they had a mod for Rochelle that turns her into a Mawile, it'll be far more difficult to crown her in the process. You can also change the voice lines for the characters, but from what I've noticed, each of them have a different method of installation. So just go ahead and read the description plus the comment section before trying these types of mod out. For the infected, the rule is similar to survivors, so be careful and tell your mates that you have one installed, unless if you want them all to miss their shots as they get nibbled by fibula high demons. This includes Toho, spooky scary skeletons, a dead meme, nightmare fuel, koikatsu, more Roblox, coach's wet dream, Scream Fortress, cave padding, and my favorite prank, cats. Then there are the specials. Now unlike the other two, these mods can cause some funky stuff to happen, so it is best if all your mates have the same special infected mod, as the game can just crash out of nowhere if the host is the only one who has these downloaded. You've been warned. Anywho, these include stuff like Dota, Snoop Dogg, freaking Shrek, Dog Walker, more Pokemans, my computer, Joji, another zombie game, definitely not another zombie game, a rabbit hole, another rabbit hole, and Big Smoke, who is sadly not a smoker. In this category, you can also change how the gore works, the sound cues, and the music. I personally go for the Silent Hill music for the tank and the witch, as they set the mood really well on higher difficulties. In the category known as game content, it's where you'll find the most important mods, as this is where you'll get new maps, new modes, and even new weapons to play with. Well, air quotes, new weapons. As a quick note, you need to play these custom maps on local co-op, instead of going for the other options being Steam servers, best available, and official dedicated. To choose a custom map, click on the add-on campaign found at the very bottom, and you're good to go. Let's start with the maps, which are found on campaigns. These can be anything from a single map nightmare, like Liberia Inferno, or a 12-part buggy extravaganza, like Silent Hill. Right. You can also find stuff that are based or inspired from other games, like Resident Evil, Half-Life, and the aforementioned Silent Hill, with the second map called Other Side of Life forever being a part of my never-ending nightmares. Let's go to some of my personal favorites that I like to recommend to you in random order. These maps can be anything from amazing, to unique, to just plain weird. Starting with Devil's Mountain, a beautiful map with a decent challenge right until the finale, which is quite easy compared to the rest of the map. It is also probably the most official looking map out of the ones that we found on the workshop. Battle with Ogre's Toys is a short but sweet map that doesn't look the best out of all of them, but hey, at least it makes you feel like Toy Story. It also has a pretty cool finale to boot. Damn It 2 Director's Cut is a pretty hard map that is originally supposed to exist between Dead Air and Blood Harvest from Left 4 Dead 1. Fallen is one of those maps that reminds me of the visual style of a little animated slideshow known as Monogatari. Very difficult map that has one of the most frustrating and vomit-inducing finales out there. Yama is one of those maps set in Japan, which immediately makes it a win in my book. And like Fallen, there's a trick to its finale. I'll spoil this one however. Remember, the director needs to take a piss every now and then, so make sure to use that to your advantage. Speaking of, there's a lot of maps that are set in different parts of the world, like Bloody Moors set in England, a map with a crazy long and super challenging 4th chapter. Barcelona, which is set in Barcelona, a map that somehow lags when we get to the finale. Or Wanli, which is set somewhere in China, a map with a very slippery finale. Darkwood is another one of those difficult maps that is one heck of a looker for something that came out of the Source engine. Like Devil's Mountain, the map can be challenging up until the finale, which is fairly easy. 149 is a map set in Area 51 of all places, another map with a very brutal finale. This one needs a lot of coordination from your team if you want to beat it in one piece. Questionable Ethics 1 and 2 are two very unique maps that have an interesting visual style that is reminiscent of Portal. They have unique gimmicks tied to them, and two finales that can go to hell. The Curse of Lazar's Castle, or Pesadelo no Castello Lazar, if you have the balls for it, are probably the hardest maps that the game can offer while still being fair. And by the game, I mean the workshop. I think, anyways. Seriously, how do you like your tanks? Of course, there are the classics like Suicide Blitz, Urban Flight, Back to School, I Hate Mountains, Die Scraper Redux, Daybreak, Dark Blood, Dead Before Dawn DC, Redemption 2, and so much more maps that we can talk about, like Life is Not a Bed of Roses, or Chernobyl, both of which keeps crashing on us sadly. There's also Journey to Splash Mountain, Night Terror, Farewell Chenming, Deadbeat Escape, 2019, Detour Ahead, Big Whack, Hard Rain Downpour, Dark Carnival Remix, Salt Hell Park, ZMB13, Dead Series, Detonator, Pitch Dark Mesa, Highway to Hell, Heaven Can Wait 2, The Space Jockey Saga, Gridlock, Whispers of Winter, Outrun, Simplicity, Fricking Prototype Mark III, The Cure, Lego Campaign, ZPTZ, that one Legend of Zelda map that I can't recall the name of, and oh so much more. Seriously, we'll be here all day if I list every single map that we played and enjoyed, so I'm just gonna cut it right there. There are a lot of hidden gems to find, along with some pretty meh maps that are scattered all over the place, so just pick whatever catches your eye, and always remember to check the comments section to see what people are complaining about. Also, remember to turn on the game instructor, as it's the primary way for map makers to actually communicate with the players. If you're trying to test out a weapon/character mods, check out Tumtara and open the console command by pressing the Tithe button and typing map Tumtara. Speaking of weapons, there are 3 types that exist out there, those that only changes the model, those that also changes the audio, and the mods that you need to look out for, the mods that changes the very stats of the gun, or just the icon on your inventory, which in turn will stop you from joining any game if you don't have the same mods. Just check the game's content on whatever you're on, and if it says weapons and sound, then you're good. If it says script, however, well, you're out of luck there, buddy. Unless if you want to tell your friends to all get the same mod. These can include weapon skins, weapon camouflage, shiny new shaders, a complete weapon replacement, or a joke weapon if you want to play with floppy weapons or finger guns. Some of these mods will require another one, which the workshop thankfully warns you about. When it happens, just click on these and subscribe to them before continuing onward. Once you're good to go, just open Tumtara and check if they don't conflict with each other. The snipers, the CSS weapons, and the shotguns seems to be the ones who are most susceptible to this. And remember, these are replacements, not new firearms, as you can't technically add new ones in the game. only new melee weapons, and some of the custom maps actually have these. Lastly, for the workshop, we have the items, UI, and game modes. Basically everything that I haven't talked about yet. Items affect healing items, temporary healing items, and explosives on how they look, how are they animated, if they have real life branding to them, if they have RNG skins to them, or if anime is involved for some reason. Same goes with the miscellaneous and the textures, where it changes some of the props in game to have the same effect, like putting tits on every single soda machine. UI is all about getting HD textures on that main menu, a new HUD while in game, even more anime, or even a few scripts that changes the balance of the game. Speaking of, you can try out new difficulties along with some wacky custom rule sets by checking out game modes, also known as mutations. And like anything that involves scripts, you and the people that you want to play with needs to have the same mod installed. And that's it for the workshop. It's a pretty fun place to browse if you know where to look. In terms of what mods I have installed all the time, well, not a lot really. Just Tumtaro for testing out mods, missing content fix, and veteran difficulty if we want to replay some custom maps and we don't want to do them in expert. These mods along with the usual suspects that you need if you're modding weapons, such as Particle Manifest, Legacy Particle Support, and Celeste Revolver Sound Enabler mod, with the last stand update finally adding the CSS weapon to the official roster. The Unlocker mod is no longer needed, so yeah. And with that, I'll leave it all up to you, now that you know what does that little tab over there actually does. In terms of in-game options, we have the usual suspects, including borderless windowed, which is actually quite surprising coming from a game from 2009, although sadly, no field of view slider. It does have a film grain slider instead of just a yes or no button, which allows you to change how gray do you want your game to look. Speaking of how it looks, advanced option is pretty bare in terms of what you can change, but I guess that's what you should expect from an old source game. You got plenty of anti-aliasing options if you have a graphics card on. I don't, so I only got crappy MSAA. But hey, at least the game runs in integrated, as long as I put everything on its lowest setting. That is quite refreshing to see really, an old game letting me play on integrated, unlike Fallout 2, which just specifically asked me to go f. Anywho, when it comes to the audio, check the speaker configurations as the game will just let you choose whatever, regardless of your headset or speakers, if they can even handle it, unlike most games where it just changes automatically. There aren't any sound mixing options sadly, so that means that the helicopter at the start of that center will just blast your eardrums no matter what, unless if you mute the game. Speaking of the game's volume, you might want to lower that if you want to listen to anything else like your Discord mates, music, a podcast, that burglar that's currently behind you, because the game is that loud that it just won't let you. Because of how crisp the sound and the music that the game offers, even if you lower the game's volume, you can still hear everything pretty clearly, which is pretty nice, so I'd say go ahead and lower the volume if it gets too loud for you. Now when it comes to captions, if you're playing the game for the first time, and you're trying to learn which special cry was that you're hearing, or whatever that music cue is for, you might want to put this on full captions, as it'll tell you, although I suggest turning it off or at least putting it on dialogue only, once you're used to the sound, just to give yourself a bit of challenge on that department. Lastly, when it comes to communication, do me a favor and put that on push to talk, and just remember the button that you need to press if you need to yell at someone. It's C. When it comes to your mouse settings, enable raw mouse input while disabling mouse filter and mouse acceleration, unless if you want to aim like you're using a controller. Speaking of controller, if you're using a gamepad that's not an Xbox controller, you need to change the input of the game by using the big picture thingy by pressing Shift Tab and clicking on the controller configuration. When it comes to the rest of the options, just remember to turn on developer console along with game instructor, especially if you're trying to learn a new map, custom or not. The option known as spectating free look is useful for getting those cinematic camera angles while you're dead, or when you want to peek at closed doors to see what spawns inside them, or if you want to be a lookout when it comes to special infected spawns, as you can call them out to your teammates if you still want to be useful while you're dead. And that's it for the options menu. If you're looking for a band-aid or anything that's missing here, you can go ahead and check out the workshop if you want better textures, a different crosshair, a fancier HUD, or even some color corrections. If you know where to look, there's probably a mod for it. So, that's Left 4 Dead 2. It has 13 maps, minus the hundreds found in the workshop, each having 2 to 5 chapters to chew through, which is nothing compared to the behemoths that you can find out there, which have 6 to 12 chapters. 6 plus special infected to learn and counter. Emphasis on the learn aspect if you're going for verses. Speaking of, 5 plus game modes to play. Seriously, I didn't even touch up on the other parts of this game. Only campaign. There are still other modes to play out there, like scavenge, survival, all of those lovely mutations, and most importantly, versus. Each of these have their own strategies, but I haven't played much of it, since the stars rarely aligned where I can summon 5 to 7 of my mates who are somehow free to play and have the game installed. So how's the game? Graphically speaking, it's a less bleak looking Left 4 Dead, compared to 1 anyways. It has more ambient lighting going on, and that is counting both the night and the new day maps that it offers. There is something that I sorta missed from the non-generic field of view of the first game along with its viewable legs. But then again, mods can sorta fix that. Sorta. Also, if you want to play Left 4 Dead 1 on 2, you can with the mutation. I just don't know how accurate it is. The thing about Left 4 Dead 2 is that it can actually still show some dread without being too dark or too desaturated. As per Valve's design philosophy of making everything readable when it comes to their silhouettes, it works. Everyone from the zombies to the survivors have a distinct shape and colors to differentiate themselves from each other, minus probably the hunter until you realize that he stands differently from other zombies. Sound-wise, it's good, as the characters actually have a lot of voice lines to listen to, some of which are still fresh to us, who have played this game for 1,000 hours give or take. Look, it may say 800 there, but internet cafes exist. The special scries are easily identifiable, as so their music cues that complements their movement, action, and profile quite perfectly. Anywho, the weapons are quite punchy and it becomes apparent that you've modded your gun sounds, as most of them sounds a little deflated compared to the original, and as much as I want to sound like a broken record here, but like what I keep saying, if you don't like something, you can mod it out. Change it. I won't judge. What do I look like to you, some purist? Difficulty is just right, although the jump between advanced and expert might be too much for people, and if that's the case, go ahead and download the veteran difficulty mutation from the workshop, as it serves as a bridge between the two difficulties. You can also find harder difficulties if you're into that. The game can be overwhelming at times, but that's all up to the map maker if they want to do it that way. So with that in mind, you can take the official maps as your little training wheels to prepare you for some of the more brutal customs found at the workshop. The game had its moments in the sun back then, especially when they ported the Left 4 Dead 1 maps to Left 4 Dead 2, along with Coldstream. God, I hate that map. The game also had a bit of a revival with the Last Stand update, where a bunch of modders from the community fixed the game up, along with adding 2 new weapons and the new map. From what I've heard, however, apparently it broke some mods. Now I start to wonder if they can still keep updating the game. I wonder if they can find a workaround to increase the pool of ranged weapons in the game, so that the modders can actually add brand new weapons to play with. I wonder if they can increase the map pool of the official dedicated servers, so that they can actually run more custom maps. I wonder if they can still fix the CSS weapons being a nightmare to mod, as they keep breaking as left-handed weapons. Oh, okay, I think that's what's broken. And I wonder if they can officially add a middle ground between advanced and expert. The characters are fun, and again, none of them gets too annoying to listen to. The Left 4 Dead 1 group is a little more grounded than reality compared to 2, which are a lot more wackier, like one of them asking if he could ride a roller coaster in the middle of the apocalypse, or another talking about how he always wanted to be an axe murderer. Wait, that's the same person. But yeah, you'll find your favorite soon enough, and if someone already has it, oh well, go find another. Gameplay-wise, it's simple. Simple enough that the game can actually demand warranted perfection from its players, with the expert or even harder difficulties. Its cooperative aspect is easy to grasp, but at least it's functional, as it actually does its job of bringing everyone together, instead of letting some idiot run off completing everything by themselves without any repercussion. The game system reminds me a lot of Counter-Strike, maybe because it's Valve. The whole crouch to steady your aim and no sprinting seems to be right for the type of game that it wants to be, and no mechanic feels out of place. You don't really need other systems to clog up the works, since there are no zombies that are way faster than you, sprinting is not really necessary, and there aren't any slow but tough zombies that require specific weak points. so a different aiming system is also not necessary. I mean, the melee combat of this game is really basic. You swing your weapon, and if it hits a zombie, it dies. It's as simple as it gets, but it works for what kind of game it is. There isn't really anything to worry about when it comes to its gameplay, minus the obvious one being lag. The speed of everything from the healing to the weapon reloads are just right. Nothing's too fast or too slow that you just feel like you're in an artificial disadvantage. The game is pretty much of its time, as there aren't any microtransactions to speak of, since you can just add whatever you want in the game, even if it's not on the workshop. There are specific guides for those if you have some music, textures, or 3D models that you want to put in the game. Spray tags aren't limited to what you find in the game, and aren't something that you have to pay for. There aren't any DLCs, at least on the PC version. Right, this game also came out in the 360. I almost forgot about that. There are no leveling, no skill trees, no side objectives, no distractions, no sunk cost fallacy. Just modes that puts you in square one every single time you start a run. It could be considered as a negative, but I find it kinda nice to see a game that's just this straightforward. So that's Left 4 Dead 2, a little piece of media from more than a decade ago of what games were back then. The game whose jankiness only shows when you're lagging really badly, or if the map maker messed up with the pathfinding on the map, leading to some interesting encounters. I seriously can't think of a single negative thing to say about this game. I mean, who knows? Unlike the previous game that I covered, I haven't played a single game of this online with randoms, so there might be some negatives there. From what I just got from Rockon Saber, you need to be careful when playing this game online with people that you don't know, as they expect you to be using 101% of your brain at all times, and they truly want you to shove that hunter mid-flight while you're in 300 ping, if they haven't kicked you out already by virtual ping alone. So it's about what I expect from an online community. Anywho, check your pulse, your surroundings, and whatever messages you got in the game after joining an online server, as they can be modded. So there could be like, oh I don't know, 8 survivors in one map, a bunch of custom weapons including a flamethrower, and for some reason, they now have ranking and a leveling system shoved into the game. What even? With that in mind, other than for how polished it is, I can't really find anything that's exceptional about it. But you know what? That's fine. Not every single game needs to be a new type of transportation method. I'm not the sort of person who loses sleep when that doesn't happen, and sometimes, all I need is a perfectly good wheel, and this game fits that criteria. Let's see if Back 4 Blood can somehow find a gap to fill in when it's out. As for Left 4 Dead 2, go get it if you're still one of the few who don't have it on their library. It can go as cheap as $2, and that's a steal for how much entertainment you're getting, as long as you have friends to play with. This is still a co-op game after all. Next time will be different. It's not gonna be a guide per se. Instead, we're just gonna have a little talk. A talk about a game that made me realize that hype is just an illusion.